Is this a bug? Wait, I can't respawn.
A few moments later.
What is this? Are we going into a cutscene while it says I'm dead?
2,000 years later.
Okay, now I'm now I'm back. And that's why it's in early access, guys. Early access games are like Russian roulettes. You never know what you're gonna get. Gamers go through such a roller coaster of a journey with absolute magical moments, and well, some comical moments as well. But it's only the true brave ones that pay for an early access title. You know who you are. What's that early access title, you ask? It's called Dragonkin the Banished, the new kid on the block in the ARPG world. Now, when Dragonkin the Banished introduced some gameplay trailers, it grabbed my attention. Something about its dragon-inspired theme, world, and its unique game-changing feature, the Ancestral Grid, more on that later, got me hungry for another action-packed character and loop progression game loop we all enjoy in a good ARPG. Because that's what matters most in ARPGs, a game loop you can spend hours and hours doing with a fun class and a great loot and progression system. Does Dragonkin the Banished live up to the hype? Well, we're definitely gonna find out. I opted to buy Dragonkin the Banished and I played it for 13 hours. So sit back, relax, and let's go on a little journey into early access heaven. My journey, as always, began through character creation, or lack thereof. In Dragonkin the Banished, I was not able to customize my character like in other RPGs, but given the bullet I bit into with this early access title, I knew this wasn't a finished product. Currently in early access, there are 3 classes you can play. Knowing my indecisiveness, I was toggling back and forth pondering on what class to play. I ended up choosing the Oracle class, which is Dragonkin's version of a mage-type character. As I finished picking out my character, I then spawned into the game, and immediately you're greeted by a few NPCs.
Who knows? Perhaps the heroes that the Alliance of Men has been waiting for will be found among this unit's latest recruits.
Well, that's embarrassing. Such high hopes for me. And I'm not even facing the right way. After meeting up with my allies, I was immediately introduced to some enemies as we briefly breach into the next phase of the game. During this phase, I noticed how I was easily going through enemies, as I almost felt like the game was incredibly easy. If only future me knew this wasn't going to be the case. As we continued killing groups of mobs, we finally reached the main city of Monteskai. I was then prompted to go into the council room for my very first quest. After 5 minutes of walking around in circles like I knew where I was going, I finally found the path to the council room.
2 hunters against an army of adepts? You cannot be serious.
Perhaps you can get off your lazy ass, your majesty, and maybe help us out. That'd be phenomenal. After that rough conversation with the king, we ventured off towards the village, where unsurprisingly we encountered more enemies to fend off. Once all the enemies were taken care of, I wanted to start checking out the progression systems for my character. I mean, this is an ARPG after all. I went into the menus and I was greeted with a quick guide on how to use the Ancestral Grid for my character. For anyone unfamiliar with the Ancestral Grid, this is the game-changing feature Dragonkin the Banished offers when it comes to using your characters and pets' abilities. When you loot enemies, you have a chance to drop an item called fragments. These fragments can be new abilities for your specific class, or they can be a combination of different modifiers that will change or enhance your abilities. You then insert these fragments onto the Ancestral Grid. Now, the interesting thing here is that you don't get full access to the entire grid at the start. As you continue leveling in Dragonkin the Banished, you will unlock different paths of the grid. It's literally like you're trying to solve a puzzle for your build by trying to fit the right combinations together. It will be interesting how your character will play with all these different abilities and modifiers going off all at once with this grid. Now, you can only place 5 class-specific abilities onto the grid at a time, while the rest of the grid will be used for modifiers and also pet abilities as well. After a series of mind-numbing quests, I finally hit level 8. Now, I don't normally celebrate this milestone in an ARPG, but it seemed like the campaign wanted to enrich me with plenty of fetch quests early on. As you continue to level in Dragonkin the Banished, enemies start doing a lot more significant damage onto your character. At times, you start to notice how much your HP takes a big dip when getting hit. Sometimes you can die off 2 hits if you're not too careful. It's obvious the balancing still needs tuning, but not having any significant upgrades to gear doesn't make the situation all too great. As future me is talking right now, past me has no clue what's yet to come later on. As I progressed in the campaign and gained more levels, I realized my pet wasn't really doing much. At this time, I did have a pet skill slotted and some modifiers for it in the ancestral grid, but it seemed my pet was just following me along and doing barely any damage when attacking enemies. At this point, I was considering removing my pet's skill ability and its modifiers and adding more modifiers to my skills instead. I mean, the pet can just follow me around, I guess.
I have guarded this domain for over a decade. From pest, fire, and brimstone. And you dare say no more treats.
On a much more positive note, in Dragonkin the Banished, you are able to customize and utilize the city to your liking. Kind of almost like using the city as your main fortress, where you can spend points on upgrading different types of operations. I found this quite interesting, and it adds another element to endgame progression that I don't normally see in an ARPG. I continued on trying to push through the campaign, and at level 15 I was given the task of entering a dungeon. And at this moment, the floodgates of Dragonkin the Banished started opening.
Buckle up, it's gonna be a bumpy one!
Let's just say my experience with dungeons so far has been rather difficult. But knowing the prideful gamer I am, I finally finished the dungeon and was able to advance onto the next phase of the campaign. What I'd like to point out is that the health and damage of enemies needs to be more balanced. I feel like some elite enemy mobs have very high health pools, which makes it seem like they are almost unkillable, while enemies can also one-shot you at any given time as well. Now, since this is an early access game, I hope the devs can make the balancing better, as I actually really enjoyed the dungeon portion of this game, even though they were making me break a sweat. The dungeon mechanics are simple to understand, with you only just focusing on the kill meter towards the left of your UI. Once the kill meter is filled by killing mobs inside the dungeon, you are prompted to head towards the second level of the dungeon, where you'll fight some more mobs along with doing an objective of some kind, and then ultimately facing off against the boss. I was off to do some endgame activities and see if the game would improve, but I'll be honest, I didn't feel very confident that would be the case given my experience so far in dungeons and the campaign. Right now, the gear and weapons feel lackluster and don't have much significant impact in the progression of your character. In Dragonkin the Banished, the early endgame feature after you finish the campaign is called Hunts, where you partake in dungeon-like levels around the world map. It reminds me of something similar to the Paragon board in Diablo 4, but mainly centered on objectives rather than character progression. After accepting my first hunt, I was off to the deep ocean floors. I have to admit, the level design in this game is quite well done and takes advantage of all different types of biomes and settings to keep the players engaged. As I embarked on my first hunt, I realized there was a reason why it's called Hunts. And let's just say I was the center of attention. It almost felt like the devs just wanted to just kill me. Like every single time I would go into these hunts, I would just straight up die. Like, how's that even fair? Like, come on. I can't even kill that mob. Like, seriously, his health barely even could go down. Like, how are you supposed to even progress through these type of things?
Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight.